Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. I do not say this lightly. I think we were looking at the most impressive official visit weekend we have seen the Miami Hurricanes host since Mario Cristobal has gotten to this Miami Hurricanes program. And I don't say this lightly because many of the Miami Hurricane fans know who've been rocking with the fellas the last couple of years. We have discussed a lot of loaded visit weekends. I don't think we've seen a better one than what Miami's going to host over the next couple of days. The other thing I would note with this visit weekend, these are not BS visits. I mean, you look at the names we're going to talk about over the next 15 minutes, Miami's got a legitimate chance to land almost every single name we're going to talk about. Now, is Miami going to land every single name we talk about? No, probably not. But I think Miami's got a legitimate chance at every single one of these guys, which is a little bit different. Like sometimes you see official visits and it's like, all right, cool that they're getting on campus. Probably not going to sign with this program. I don't think you can say that with the names that we're about to talk about over the next couple of minutes. I'm fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Miami Hurricane fans, I want to just start with just to express my appreciation with the amount of support y'all have shown the fellas really over the last couple of years as we've talked the recruiting trail. It's been an absolute blast for myself to talk about how Mario Cristobal has transformed this roster. The amount of support that y'all continue to show to the fellas in the offseason, it means the world. These are some of my favorite conversations to have, like the nitty-gritty roster building conversations. Appreciate you guys more than y'all know. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. And let's start at the wide receiver position where, look, I think we said the same thing with the offensive line position a couple of months ago, where it felt like Mario Cristobal in this program was going to push their chips into the middle of the table to land an elite offensive line class. They're on their way to doing that, obviously, with Jackson Camwell. I think you get a very similar vibe for the wide receiver position as well. And we have to start with, by far, in my opinion at least, the number one wide receiver in the land. That is five-star wide receiver Tristan Keys, who been committed to LSU for the last couple of months. It is very clear that Miami is the team that is pushing the hardest to flip this kid, and rightfully so. You talk about the freshmen that we've seen come into the college football landscape and make a year one impact. Tristan Keys is one of those kind of guys. At 6'2.5", I think he's closer to 200 pounds. At least he plays closer to 200 pounds on the film. This kid is about as physically imposing of a wide receiver that you'll see in the country. Now, what stands out to me about Tristan Keys is he's much more than just a big body that works vertically down the field. Like most of the time when you're talking about these 6'3", 200-pound wide receivers, they're just vertical guys at the high school ranks. Tristan Keys is about as developed of a wide receiver that you see come out of high school. Works the middle of the field extremely well. The body control and physicality at the catch point is absolutely elite with that basketball background. Extremely dynamic after the catch. I guess how I would sum it up is you don't see many bodies like Tristan Keys move the way he does. And so that size, speed combination along with the body control and coordination make this kid a matchup nightmare, like a wide receiver one, arguably when he steps on campus. You look at Miami in the wide receiver room, I think Mario Cristobal wants to do a better job. And it's not necessarily to say that Miami's done a bad job with wide receivers, but I look at Miami being in South Florida and say there's no excuse for Miami not to be trotting out, top 10 wide receiver rooms in the country every single year. I think Miami feels really good about the freshmen they have coming in 2025. Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw, Malachi Tony. You stack a guy like Tristan Keys on top of those guys, you are talking about some of the better wide receiver play, in my opinion, that you'll see across the country. Next wide receiver I want to talk about, Samari Wingo. Florida kid, another bigger body that really good at the catch point, probably doesn't create the separation that you kind of hope, doesn't create the separation that Tristan Keys does. And that's probably why you see a little bit lower of a ranking, but the athletic profile for Samari Wingo, I think is really, really good. And again, Miami's leaning into some of these bigger bodied wide receivers that can work vertically down the field. It's a skill set that Miami at times has not had enough of. You saw the value that a guy like Isaiah Horton brought to Miami in the 2024 year. You see the value that a guy like Joshua Moore might bring to Miami over the next couple of years. We want these bigger bodied wide receivers that can work vertically down the field and can go make plays with the football in the air. Both Tristan Keys and Samori and Wingo are those kind of guys. Last one I'll talk about at the wide receiver position, Messiah Hampton. This one seems to be an Oregon lean, but Miami's probably that contender. And I think one of the things to note here, he's committing June 13th. So it's about 2 weeks after he takes a visit to Miami. Can Miami like change the tides of this recruitment similar to how we saw them do it with Jackson Campbell? Like Jackson Campbell was considered an Oregon lean until he got on campus to Miami, and Miami got it done. Can you do it with Messiah Hampton too? A guy that is 10 minutes down the road from me up here in Rochester, New York. The best way to describe Messiah Hampton is a playmaker. You know, he's not as big of a body as a guy like Tristan Keys or a guy like Samori and Wingo, but I look at Messiah Hampton and say, this kid's elite after the catch, really good body control, can create separation. Again, maybe not the juiced up, crazy athletic profile that Tristan Keys has. You want to get guys that can go make plays. And the thing where I look at Messiah Hampton is that kid's a playmaker. He's a dynamic route runner. He's dynamic after the catch, a guy that you can use in a ton of different ways. In my opinion, he's one of the more all around impressive wide receivers that you see in the 2026 cycle. Next top target for Miami going to the running back room, it's Derrick Cooper. This kid rocks. I've been very vocal. I think Derrick Cooper might be the best running back in the class. And look, I like Savion Hitter. I'm a Michigan fan, and Michigan wants Savion Hitter bad. I don't, at least from what I've seen, I think Derrick Cooper has a very strong argument to be that number one running back. He's 6'1", he's 205. He's a really unique kid because he kind of doesn't have that prototypical running back body. He's a little bit more high-waisted, elite contact balance, has the long speed, really sudden mover, has some shake at the second level. This kid's a box checker. And the thing that's kind of scary about Derrick Cooper is like what happens when he gets up to 6'1", 215 pounds, of which he's well on his way to doing, and maintains the juice and the long speed that he has. He's a guy that you don't see a lot of running backs who go over 6'1" have the suddenness and the contact balance that Derrick Cooper has. Box checking running back. And what you're selling if you're Mario Cristobal is, look, we're going to have some of the best offensive line play in the country over the next couple of years. We're going to want to run the football. Derrick Cooper, I mean, you have the ability to immediately come on campus and be a guy for the Miami Hurricanes in that running back room over the next couple of years. Going to the defensive side of the football, that's where it starts next. And we've seen Mario Cristobal not be shy to push his chips into the middle of the table for some of the top defensive line play that you see at the high school ranks. He did it with Justin Scott a couple of cycles ago. If you're doing it for somebody, you're probably doing it for Lamar Brown. This defensive line class, especially the big bodies on the inside, is not very good. And I think Miami probably wished they did a little bit better of a job in 2025 landing some of those bigger names on the board. You got a chance right here to fix that with Lamar Brown. Now, he's an LSU lean. This is kind of how we talked about Jakeem Stewart at this time last year as well. I look at Lamar Brown and say, yes, LSU is probably clearly the front runner because he's a Louisiana kid. Miami's been working hard at this one. And again, we've seen Mario Cristobal get it done for the guys that he really wants to get it done for. I look at Tristan Keys and I look at Lamar Brown. Those seem to be the guys that Miami might want to be really aggressive for. He's not necessarily a massive body, but as a 3-tech, he's a penetrator, which I'll say this too, fits what Miami wants to do. You look at what Miami asked for of their interior defensive linemen, it's a little less two-gapping, and it's a little more like penetrating, getting behind the line of scrimmage and creating negative plays, and that's going to maintain the same way with Corey Heatherman coming in. This would be a really good fit, and he's by far the best interior defensive lineman that we see in this class. He's a guy that also could play on the interior of the offensive line as well. It'd probably be a first-round pick at either position he wants to play. I think that's how good of an athlete that Lamar Brown is. How about Anthony Jones, 5-star edge rusher from the state of Alabama? This seemed to be like an Alabama-Auburn battle. That doesn't seem that way anymore. And you look at a team that could land him who's out of state, it's probably the Miami Hurricanes. I freaking love Anthony Jones. He's a guy that blends extreme power. I mean, he's a guy that's a state champ in the shot put. And you see that on the football field. His ability to use his length and just put tackles right into the lap of quarterbacks. Excuse me. That's what stands out the most. But he also blends that with a really violent first step and the ability to beat tackles around the outside shoulder. When you have the ability to do it both ways with that burst and bend and quickness, but also have the ability to just go speed to power right through tackles, you're an extremely difficult pass rusher to deal with. That's kind of how I view Anthony Jones. I'll say this, I kind of value him more as a 5-star. And I know 24/7 Sports, they're not low on him at 41 in the country. To me, he seems like a top 32 guy. Last one on the defensive line real quick, Anthony Kennedy, a guy that I don't love as much as a guy like Lamar Brown, clearly, with the recruiting ranking that we see. He's one of those rare bodies, and we've talked about this a lot during the last couple of months. This 2026 cycle does not have many 315 plus bodies, and they don't have a lot of quality bodies at that. I look at Anthony Kennedy from Arkansas and say he's one of those rare guys that has the body type that you're looking for in the middle of that defensive line. I think there's some work to do as an athlete. I think there's some work to do with his body, kind of getting his body shaped the right way. A guy that you might want to bet on, considering there's not that many guys that look like Anthony Kennedy in this 2026 cycle. Defensive backs. Really intriguing storyline here, Samari Matthews. This was a guy that was considered a Clemson lean all the way. Clemson's hosting their only and massive official visit this weekend. Samari Matthews decides to come to Miami instead of Clemson. So essentially, in my opinion, that would knock Clemson out of the running for his commitment. You have South Carolina and you have Texas that are battling. This was a guy that I don't think we've talked about one time in relationship to the Miami Hurricanes, but a guy that I really like. I mean, 6'1", 180 with extremely long arms. I mean, these arms have to be going almost 34 inches at this point. Really good in press man coverage. He's a longer guy, but he's a really smooth athlete that can mirror guys in man coverage, use that length in a very effective way. And then in zone coverage, he's really explosive. Can drive down on throwing windows, get his hands on a lot of footballs. A guy that I think could be an island cornerback. And what I mean by that is a guy that you can ask to play press man coverage on the boundary and just kind of not worry about it. Those are the traits that Samari Matthews brings to the table. Last one we'll talk about, Chauncey Keenan. One of the more impressive athletic profiles that you see at the cornerback room. He's got a really, really impressive track and field background with the ideal frame that you're looking for. Not as technically proficient as a guy like Samari Matthews, but a guy that you look at the profile and say, we'll get him to be a good football player. And we've seen Mario Cristobal lean into this at times. Like, hey, give me the guys that check all the boxes and we'll make them good football players. That's Chauncey Keenan. You know, I don't think he's an elite football player right now, but there's a reason that he's a 5-star prospect according to 24/7 Sports, because what he can be over the next couple of years, it's all ACC caliber, all American caliber, at least the way I look at it. Another Florida kid that Miami's battling for. And we didn't even talk about a couple other guys that Miami's probably trending for on this weekend. I kind of wanted to focus on some of the bigger names that I think Miami has a legitimate shot at. I don't know if we'll have the commitment sweatshirt come out after this one. I think there's a few names that you're probably looking at. Really, really big opportunity. And again, if this visit weekend goes well, you're looking at Miami having a bona fide shot at landing a top 5 class in the country. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.